Good day, Black Knight Scholars. My name is Mr. Deegan. Welcome to Unit 1, Lesson 1 of our VidNotes video casts for World History 2. What are we studying? What issues have been important in your lifetime? Terrorism, the environment, population growth. Is the world overpopulated? We're going to be talking about these issues in Unit 1. The question we're going to ask is, what parts of the world are most developed? And let's first start our notes off by defining development. Development is, in social studies terms, the extent to which a society is making effective use of its human and natural resources. Natural resources, an example could be coal. And what's a human resource? Well, the jobs that people do in a country. Here's a farmer. Here's a soldier. These all relate to how developed a country is. Let's move on to look at this map of human development. This is using statistics from the United Nations in 2011. We can see by the key the level of development and how it depends on the darker the shade of red. So what countries in the world are most developed? You see the United States, Canada, Western Europe, southern part of South America, Australia, Japan. What areas of the world are least developed? You see a large portion of Africa. You see parts of Asia. What are the differences between a developed country and a developing country? I'm going to talk about these different phrases now. First, a developed country. Well, a developed country has a diverse economy that has been industrialized and has advanced forms of technology. A developing country has a less advanced and less diverse economy with slow industrial growth. How do we measure development? We're going to talk now about a number of ways that demographers, those that study people and population, how they measure development in countries. One way is the money factor, GDP, gross domestic product. What is that? Gross domestic product is the goods and services produced within a country during a given year. In other words, it's the wealth of a nation. Also, development can be measured using GDP per capita. What's that? Goods and services produced per person in a country in a given year. And how do you calculate GDP per capita? Well, you take the GDP, the wealth of a nation, you divide it by the population in that nation, and you get the GDP. This map talks about the different countries and their GDP per capita. And again, the darker the shade, the higher the GDP per capita. Note the countries that are high in GDP per capita: the US, Canada, Western Europe, Australia, Japan. How is development measured? It can also be measured in terms of transportation and communication services. It also can be measured in terms of the types of jobs. And generally speaking, the more job diversity a country has, the more developed that country is. How else is development measured? We can say, if you're a demographer, someone who studies people, life expectancy at birth, these babies. And we can say, if you live up to 60, or if you're expected to live up to age 60, then you're considered a developing country. If in your country a baby is expected to live to 70 years old or more, you are considered a developed country. Development is also measured in terms of infant mortality rate. What is infant mortality rate? Mortality meaning death. So it's the expectant rate of death for an infant in a country. And if 6% or greater is the infant mortality rate in a country, it's considered developing. If you have a country that has an infant mortality rate of 0.05% or less, that's considered a developed country. In general, this shows how healthy a country is. This map shows you the infant mortality rates in countries around the world. And you see the lighter the shade, the more healthy a country is, so the less likely an infant will die. The darker the shade, the more likelihood that an infant will die. Another way development is measured is through education and literacy. Education and literacy. Literacy, the ability to read and write. So, how does a demographer measure education and literacy? The average number of school years attended. If you, on average, attend school for 10 years, you live in a developed country. If, on average, you attend school for 2 years, you live in a developing country. Also, literacy rate. If 98% or more of your country is literate, you're considered a developed country. If 60% of your country or less is literate, you're considered a developing country. And here you see a world map of female literacy rates. The lighter the shade, the less literate a country is. In general, we can say today the developing nations of the world, aka the poorest, have the fastest growing populations. And here you see a breakdown of world population, a distribution of how population growth is in the world today. We're about here when it comes to where we are. And you see in pink, developed countries are not expected to grow in population very much over the next many years. However, in tan, light brown, you see the developing countries of the world are expected to grow rapidly. And by 2100, we'll have 10 billion people in the world. Right now, we have about 7 billion people. We're winding down lesson 1. We only need to do our summary question. This is a question that summarizes what we've done in lesson 1. Pause the video and answer that question on page 3. All right, that is lesson 1 in a nutshell. We are done. Next lesson, we'll talk more about environmental issues in the modern world. See you next time.